Welcome to the Medic Side Hustles podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Dr. Shubhendu Kulshreshtha, an executive coach and emergency physician, helping clinicians like you build in a personalized roadmap to make medicine your side hustle. I'm also the author of the Impactful Clinician micro newsletter and the Side Hustle Readiness quiz taken by over 350 clinicians. In each episode, we'll sit down with an inspiring guest who's redefined their career, turning their strengths and experience into something greater. We'll dig into their journey and draw out their roadmap to success, followed by a coaching spin with getting them to ask me a few questions. Live audience, you'll get a chance to ask us your questions at the end, so please keep putting them in the comments and start your sentence with the letter Q so it's easier for you to find. All right, so are we ready? Brilliant. So Samyak, thanks for joining me today. It's been
Thank
a pleasure
having me.
knowing you. I'm
Yep.
going to hand over the mic for a quick second to just let you introduce yourself.
Hi guys, this is Dr. Samyak Dhawan. Shubhendu and I go a long way. We did MBBS together back home in India in Manipal. And I'm so grateful he's invited me on this podcast to share my experience and where I am in my professional journey at the moment and why I do what I do and how is it that I got here. And so I'm really excited to dive into all of this and talk about my journey as well as Shubhendu's journey and answer any questions that you guys might have.
Yeah, so thanks so much for joining me. And like I said, we go a long way back, and it's been a fantastic journey that both of us have taken in very different realms. And just to start off with, I've got you down as Director of Operations for KayaKalp. Tell us a bit about what your current role is all about.
Right, so KayaKalp Global is basically the only integrative medicine derm center based out of Delhi NCR. And what we do is we're integrating modern medicine with traditional medicine to help treat autoimmune skin disorders such as vitiligo, leukoderma, or psoriasis. And the idea here is that a lot of the times people will go to, and I myself am a modern medicine practitioner, but we understand the limitations that modern medicine has, especially in these disorders, especially chronic disorders. And so for as far as chronic disorders go, there's only a limit up to which I feel modern medicine can help. I mean, modern medicine is great for acute disorders. I'm not going to compete with that. However, having said that, lifestyle disorders, chronic disorders, there's definitely a scope for alternative medicine to come in along with modern medicine. At the same time, I'm not debating whether modern medicine is better than an alternative medicine. I feel that there's a place for both the sciences to come together and help people who are suffering from chronic disorders. Could be dermatology, could be autoimmune, any sort of disorder. So that's where I'm at. That's where my entire family. So my parents are Ayurvedic doctors, alternative medicine doctors. I'm a modern medicine practitioner, and so then we together have this brand now called KayaKalp Global, and we've been doing this for the last 3 decades. We've just opened up a branch in Mumbai. We have branches in Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. We have branches in Delhi. And that's what we do. We have a very interesting telemedicine model, online versus offline hybrid consultation model where people will come into a walk-in OPD, and they can also consult with us using a video consultation or an audio consultation or even a chat consultation if they prefer that. Because I'm sure you know there's a lot of stigma around vitiligo, especially in our country. So that's what we do. We provide them with consultation and we provide them with nutritional supplements, medicines if they need, whether it's modern medicine or lifestyle modifications, and educate them. And then we don't leave them. When I say that, a lot of the times patients will walk into a allopathy doctor's clinic, and that's that. They'll probably write you a prescription. They'll give you a script. You'll go outside. You'll buy it from the pharmacy, and then you'll probably follow up once or twice with the doctor. But diseases like vitiligo and psoriasis, they need a bit more of a hand-holding approach with the patient. You have to keep following up with them. You have to make sure they're taking their diet on point, their lifestyle is on point. As I'm sure a lot of people know that stress is an aggravating factor for all of these autoimmune disorders now, whether it's cancer, BP, sugar, thyroid, whatnot. So that's where we differentiate ourselves, because we have a staff about 200 support executives now, health advisors now, who are constantly, receiving incoming calls, making outgoing calls, making sure the patients are on top of their treatment journey or wellness journey with us. So that's the model. It's kind of a hybrid online offline consultation telemedicine model. It's a very niche model where we're specializing in only integrative medicine for chronic autoimmune disorders. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and what does the word operations mean to you? And I believe, I mean, I understand that since it's a family brand, there's blurred lines in terms of what your role is. But if you were sort of being a bit purist, what does operations mean? What do you do and what do you not do?
Right. So At the moment, my father takes care of a lot of the medical aspect of it, as in he is the one who handles the patients in clinic. At the same time, we also have different doctors on payroll, around 10, which I've hired. So when I say operations, I don't just mean operations, I mean marketing, I mean sales, I mean operations, I mean HR, I mean organizational behavior. I'm taking care of all of that. While my father takes care of the patients in clinic who are walking in, my mother takes care of the entire inventory and accounting. So that's the role that we've defined. My dad will not then do sales and marketing. He won't take care of the employees. He won't be taking care of salaries. He won't be taking care of HR. He won't be making the decision on who onboards the company, who doesn't. But that's
Yeah.
where I step in. And my dad and I won't be talking to my mother whether we should be ordering X amount of medicines for this month, or should we keep a buffer of, let's say, 2 months or 1 month, depending on the weather and where we're sourcing those ingredients
Yeah.
from. So that's the role that we've divided. And I agree with you, there were a lot of blurred lines initially. But then I think that's where my education came in. And when I stepped in, I made sure that there were these, hierarchies and role demarcations, because there can't be three bosses in one company. You need to have proper role clarity. Otherwise, then employees get really confused.
Yeah. And when
And
you
if
say education, you mean your MBA
right,
that helped you with this?
and I think that, yeah. So I feel like MBBS really taught me how to work hard, as it does to a lot of us. But then MBA really taught me how to work smart.
Ah, I love that.
And I was able to put a lot of my hard work into smart work. It basically gave me a new language on how the world works and how the world functions. And just to piggyback off of what we were just talking before the interview started, and I told we doctors are really keyholed into just one thing. We'll specialize. Let's say an ophthalmologist will just specialize in the eye, right? But when you zoom out, like, there's so much more happening in the world. And if you really want to start your successful eye center or an eye hospital, when you're done with education, you realize you have no idea. You have no idea how to do your taxes. You have no idea how to hire people. You have no idea how taxation works, how finances work, how anything works. And then it's just you're not able to fulfill that dream and you end up working for someone else. And so I feel like what we discussed earlier, it's so important to continue to learn something. And I think that's where you're doing a fantastic job, where you're motivating people and bringing other people on board and teaching them how we should be doing something outside of what we're already trained to do. And why it's so important, especially in today's fast changing landscape, it's so important that doctors, especially doctors, need to be on top of a lot of things.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. I mean, I really truly believe that the one thing that doctors want to do in their lifetime in the world is to make an impact, make a difference to the world around them. And sometimes we go into the field of medicine thinking that's the best way to do it, and then leave realizing that we're often stuck at the helm of somebody else. But let's go back to when you started university. So we met in Manipal. Did you know that this is where you were going to end up when you started? Do you have a vision for this?
No. So back in the day, I wanted to become a dermatologist, right? Up until I think the middle of third year or initial fourth year, I was very much interested in becoming a dermatologist, and I was taking all of those extra classes and coaching classes for cracking those MD exams. But I think I realized when actual clinics started in final year, when we actually started seeing patients, talking to the patients, I realized that we're not making a lot of impact. I think somewhere it clicked inside of me that this is not what I see myself personally doing for the rest of my life. I didn't see myself sitting in a chamber and seeing 10 to 15 patients a day for the rest of my life. I felt personally I could make a lot more impact if there was a way to multiply what I'm doing right now. So if, let's say, I'm seeing 15 patients, but if there were two of me or five of me, we could multiply that. And so that's where the idea of social entrepreneurship came in. And that's a
Okay.
very interesting concept wherein I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm not just a for-profit entrepreneur. I'm doing social entrepreneurship where my actions not just bring in money to me, but they're also helping people who actually need help. And that
Do
money also allows me to then subsidize treatments for people who are not able to purchase them or not able to afford them. So that's where social entrepreneurship comes. And when that idea came inside me, I think the inception was 2017. I
Do you
think I started
remember?
really, yeah.
Do you remember that moment when this sort of solidified in your mind, or
I
that
think
moment?
it was definitely one of those mornings when we were walking from our food court to the hospital entrance. And I'm sure you remember the hospital entrance. It wasn't as bright or as inviting as it should have been, especially given that Manipal skies during monsoons are always dull and gloomy and grey,
Yeah.
much as they are in the UK.
Yes.
So it wasn't a very great feeling. I don't know. I just realized that maybe this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I can definitely have more impact if I can multiply myself. I couldn't
Mm.
do that, but then I started studying more into how I can refine my approach and broaden my horizon. And then that's where I think when I came home in the winter or whenever we get time off back home, I think my father was the one who gave me the idea of doing an MBA.
Okay.
And I don't know where he got that from, but I think collectively as a family, then we really started discussing, having those discussions around whether this is something I can do or not. Because it really needed me to go back to doing integers and algebra and learning 10th standard maths again to crack the GMAT and learning my verbs and my proverbs and God knows what not for English. So it was a lot of, I think it was harder than doing coaching classes because we're so used to working hard in medicine. We're so used to doing the long hours. We're so used to just hustling. It's like our second nature. Like we're supposed to work hard, right? We feel medicine makes us feel that working hard delivers the best results, but that's not true at all.
What
I
is the
think
truth?
there's a point at 80% where I feel the marginal return of your effort starts diminishing.
Mm.
Once you've hit 80% of your effort, the remaining 20% that you're trying to achieve is not going to come from just directly proportional 20% effort. That last 20% will take another 80% of your effort. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not
Yeah.
proportional. The returns are not proportional.
Absolutely. But what needs to change? What do you think? If it's not hard work that's going to get you to the end, what is it that will?
I think knowing, first of all, the realization that it's not it, that hard
Mm.
work is not it. I think we're stuck in a hamster loop.
Yeah.
All of us clinicians, we're stuck in that loop and we're all just working hard. We're doing degrees, we're doing courses, we're doing online courses, we're doing these extra certificates, these CMEs, getting those certificates, those points for what? I don't think none of us are actually investing into learning how to grow or multiply our sources of income. We're just improving our, and I see a lot of our batchmates, they're improving their CVs a lot, okay? And I respect them for that. But the hard truth, the cold hard truth is at the end of the day, no matter how good their CV is, if it's not bringing in more money to the table, and if, look, let's be real, everybody wants to provide food for the family, right? Everybody wants their kids to go to good colleges. Everybody wants their children to go to Harvard or whatnot. And so why not? What is wrong? I think the second realization, Shubhendu, especially for people in India who are listening to this right now, is that making money is not a bad thing for a doctor. Okay? Doctors can make money. If lawyers can make money, if engineers can make money, if accountants can make money, you can bet that doctors in at least our Commonwealth regions, let's forget about the US for now. In our Commonwealth region, they deserve to make more money. So when they realize that hard work is not it, it's not going to get them more money, and the fact that it is important to make money, there's for some reason there's just stigma around India. Doctors making money is a bad thing. Or if a certain doctor is making more money, he's probably unethical.
Mm.
Once we change that dynamic, I think doctors will then start having more conversations and going out of the comfort zone. I think then there'll be a natural flow state, like the way it is in the US. Doctors do MBA. It's very common for MDs to do MBA. Like when I was doing MBA, there were so many kids in my class who were dual degrees. They were pursuing not just MD, they were pursuing MD MBAs. And so it's a very common thing for them. And then they'll put those doctors in leadership positions. And I feel having hospitals that are run by actual MD MBAs versus having hospitals run by pure MBAs. If I was given a chance, I would definitely choose the former, right? And so that means that and that's the reason why USA is so ahead of us, because they have
Mm.
they have that horizon where they understand that clinicians should be in leadership positions in hospital and not just pure MBAs.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely resonate with what you're saying, that doing more is not getting us to that next level. There is a ceiling that we have, and I think it really takes doing things differently. And that doing differently means asking yourselves and facing the questions and the uncomfortable bits around like making money and like other challenges. How do you create value? What's your worth outside of like your clinic and that one-to-one patient interaction, right? So when did that perspective shift for you? And I want to sort of link that into how your experience with the MBA was.
Right. So I think the MBA was hard initially. It was really hard. It really pushed me out of my comfort zone because we do I don't know if your followers are aware of this, but then we have 11th standard and 12th standard, which is we're learning pre-medicine. And then we do medicine. And so for the last 7 years or 6 years, we're brainwashed into, for us, the world is only biology, right? And then as soon as I jumped in, I remember that's the first time I actually downloaded Excel on my laptop, and I didn't even know how to sum two cells. And then here I was in a team of people who everybody was just so good at data modeling and running pivot tables and God knows what not. And so I think the first 6 months, moving to a different country, doing your own laundry, making your own food, and I was in Buffalo, so it snows like anything. There's 3 feet of snow. Getting outside, going to classes, not having a vehicle of your own, just all of that together. And then the culture shock, staying away from home, learning a new degree, learning maths again, doing all of that again. It felt like everything slapped me together at once. But at the same time, I feel like those first 6 months really shaped who I was as a person because then I knew that I could actually accomplish anything. Now I feel like I can really, even if it's out of my comfort zone, I think I have the skill set to pick it up. It'll probably take me some time, but I can do it.
Yeah. And so one first discomfort was moving from Delhi to Manipal. I'm sure that was a big one.
But I think Delhi to Manipal was way easier than doing Manipal to US because that's the first time when you actually leave home. And so Delhi to Manipal was fun.
I was wondering, so you got into your MBA program, you were going through all of these challenges, you got over them, you started to learn how to use pivot table, understand money, finances, structure, all of those bits. At this point, did you know that KayaKalp was going to be what it is now? And did you know that this way you were taking it?
No, I think this whole thing has been a huge risk, even though it's a calculated one. But there's still no certainty if I would have graduated and been where I am today. And I think that's great because I didn't have any plan B. So for me, I remember when I moved back, a lot of the times I would remind myself, Samyak, if you don't do this, there literally is no going back. And you'll either have to sit for MD exams again and prepare again, which will take away another 2 to 3 years of your life. So you might as well just put in and go all out. So I think that was great because then I had no plan B.
I love these moments, and the best word that I can find for it is really audacity, right? Like what gave you the audacity to be able to do that for yourself?
Yeah, just circumstances. I had to. Like,
You
I
just
had
put
no other
yourself
option.
there.
Yeah.
Okay. And what was the moment when you sort of visualized that, oh, your parents are Ayurvedic doctors and you've got this MBBS background and you can combine that together to create a global brand? When did that sort of click for you?
I think it started coming gradually. There wasn't one certain moment. When things started picking up, that's when I realized. So there wasn't any strong conviction or strong market research to tell me that this thing will probably become a global brand. But as we kept growing, my confidence kept increasing that, this is what people actually need. Because Shubhendu, we're not pushing stuff out here, right? People are coming to us.
Yeah.
So this means that this is the need of the hour. People want integration. People aren't afraid of trying alternative medicine. I mean, people want to try alternative medicine, but at the same time, they know that modern medicine also has strong clinical conviction and strong clinical research. They want to try both things. And we often think of it as a big thing, but to me, let's just go back to MBBS.
Yeah.
Don't general medicine doctors always recommend yoga or pranayam or stress relief exercises to all of their patients? Now, isn't yoga a part of Ayurveda? I mean, modern medicine didn't come up with yoga, right? So why are all the MD medicine doctors in India or all the psychologists or all the psychiatrists recommending their patients to do pranayam or deep nasal breathing or deep breathing exercises or yoga? Where is that coming from? Everybody believes that there is merit in that. But the only problem is we just don't have strong clinical research articles out there to convince today's generation of doctors, not people, not population, not patients, but doctors, that it works. And I think in the next 10, 20 years, as more and more people understand this, as more and more clinicians are faced with patients who actually believe in alternative medicine, they'll have to push their horizon. They'll have to read up more for the sake of their patients, because patients are going online and learning about all of these alternative medicines, and modern medicine doctors don't have answers to that because they've never read about them in school.
So the
So now
doctors,
they have to.
yeah, the doctors haven't read about this, and the doctors are sort of stuck within their framework of research and evidence base. And yet, the patients, the people who it really matters to, they are able to explore this and they're able to reap the benefits of combining various forms of treatment for themselves.
Right.
And you've somehow managed to tap into what matters to the patient beyond just what matters to the clinician to create your global brand.
I think that's the biggest takeaway here, is that back home, I think in the rest of the world too, doctors are always fighting amongst themselves. I think this is where I've differentiated. If you go out there and you ask your patients, look, in business, we always talk about market research, right? We talk about focus group surveys and interviews and asking the customers what they want and then designing the product basis what they actually want, right? But nobody goes out there and asks the patients, what is it that you need?
Yeah.
Right? Doctors are just, I'm saying controversial stuff here, but like doctors are always just so in their cage of what's been taught to them and what clinical research articles tell them, that they just decide that everything else that's not been taught to them is wrong or like doesn't work. But that's not true. You have to understand what the patient wants. If your patient is seeing improvements in their rosacea or in their vitiligo by let's say doing yoga, who are you to tell them that no, there's no clinical evidence that yoga reduces the speed of increase of vitiligo?
Yeah. And I think we also forget that having no evidence isn't the same thing as having evidence
Right.
against something.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So for people that are listening to this right now and they're wondering, should I do an MBA? What would you say to them? When is the right time to do an MBA?
Look, my scenario was different. I knew that I had the potential to grow a brand. I didn't start from scratch, right? But for people who want to start from scratch, I would suggest them to finish uh, what they've started, not deviate. At least if you're doing a course, if you're into it, just finish it. I would tell them to explore, read up more. I know it's very tiring. I know coming back from a 12-hour shift or a 24-hour shift is almost exhausting. And there's barely any time left to, or mental energy left to read up more. But I think it's the need of the hour, especially after the advent of AI. It's really very important that doctors read more, they experiment more. Like for you, Shubhendu, you know how to build a website, right? You and I can build a website in a day. So if you are a doctor and I'm a doctor and we can do it, why can't others? Why can't other doctors? I think there's a mental barrier that needs to be crossed first. First thing I'd like to tell them is to stop thinking that they can't do this just because they're a doctor. If they doctors are some of the smartest people on earth, right? If we can learn how to perform procedures and do surgeries and all of that, if we can understand physiology and we can understand, let's say, how an MRI machine works, how physics works, we've cracked some of the hardest exams the planet has to offer, right? And if we can do that, we've just forgotten how smart we actually are because we've just been doing one thing for the last decade. But the reality is, if we actually go out there and put our heart and soul and mind into learning something new, we can actually learn, whether it's making a website, whether it's investing in stock markets, whether it's learning how a mutual fund works, whether it's learning how coaching works or entrepreneurship. Anything and everything out there can be learned as long as you just don't have that mental barrier.
Yeah, and we were talking about this in the event I did just yesterday as well, that we often say we want a lot of things, but we don't commit to it. And by commitment, I mean like the three currencies. You got to put time into it, you got to put energy into it, and you got to be willing to put money into it. And unless we are able to do that, we're not really committed. We might want it as much as possible, but so many of us get stuck in this fear of failure, fear of, what if it doesn't work out? Am I asking for too much? Am I considering too much? And we were kind of talking about this before around like, how do you build a safety net for yourself? How do you build a foundation that's strong enough for you to explore something outside of medicine? What are your thoughts on that, Samyak?
I feel like everybody's scenario is different. There could be would-be moms who are doing medicine right now. So their scenario is completely different. Now, if you ask a doctor who's just given birth to leave medicine and pursue something else, I don't think that's the smartest decision. Now, if let's say somebody whose kid is about to join college and there's a big expense coming up, would it be right time to leave medicine or leave a safe job or anything like that? I don't think so. So I feel there are periods that life offers you when you can actually take calculated risks. And I think it's sort of like riding a wave. As long as there's currents, you're better off doing what's safer for you. But just be cognizant of the fact anytime you see an opportunity or you feel like my workload is less, or you think the next 2 years is something that I've paid off my debt, I've my kids are in school or my kids have grown up, I don't have to drive them to classes or whatnot. If you see that 2 year horizon or even 1 year horizon, I think you should dive in. That's the right time. But that timeline is different for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many people that I speak to for whom the time is right and they feel ready to take action, but they don't feel ready to commit. And that's kind of why I created the quiz that's in the comments and the description here to sort of help people identify, okay, what are the key drivers for success if I do take this journey and where do I stand on that journey? And then it allows me to help them in a way that says, okay, here's what we can work on. Let's build your personalized roadmap. So in the next, say, 12 months, you're going to be in a different place. Yeah. So that's really, really interesting. Before we switch gears into flipping the script around and you asking me a few questions, is there anything else that you want to say to our audience?
Just the same thing. Take calculated risks and stop with the mental barrier. I just see so many people around me who have so much. I know a lot of people who have far less potential, outperforming people who have far greater potential just because they took the first step and they went with it. I think a lot of people have this paralysis of analysis and this paralysis of perfectionism, which is something I left a long time ago. A lot of people want to gather all the information they can. They want to make sure that the outcome will be just right, and they won't start until they've made sure somehow that all the cards are in place. But the truth is that's never the case. And so me personally, I don't do a lot of analysis like I used to. And I think that's where the MBA has a limitation, because MBA teaches you to become good employees. It's a master of business administration. It's not a master of entrepreneurship. They teach you how to analyze things, but analysts don't really make entrepreneurs, right? They are very good at analyzing the data. But if you really want to become an entrepreneur, you just have to take that first step. You, of course, you need analysis, but you need to have a risk taking capacity. And then knowing when to stop investing your time and energy and money, you just have to be very cognizant and self-aware of that. Like, this is not working out for me, I need to pivot now. Not being too attached to the route that you've taken, even if it's not working out for you. I see people who just won't start. I see people who will start but then won't pivot. So there's both the things that you need to be cognizant
of challenges along the way. And I think the listeners at this point might be starting to see themselves feeling slightly readier to take action, slightly readier to commit. Let's give them something to look forward to and let's kind of blow their minds. Is there any sort of numbers or figures in terms of how you measure your impact and what your life looks like now, so they're able to imagine what's possible if they do take this journey?
I'm really proud of the fact that I've built a company that hires 10 doctors on payroll, and we're seeing, I mean, more than, I'd say, 3 to 4,000 active user base a month.
Wow.
And so if I was just one clinician, I wouldn't be able to do that ever. And so the fact that I'm able to reach out to patients pan India is the sort of impact that you can have. Because when we start doing medicine, when we jump into medicine, it's not to make money. It's never about, doctors don't, sure, in India, the society works in a way that they want to make their kids doctors to have a safety net, right? But when I was in the US, you would be surprised, and I don't know how it is in the UK, but kids are not becoming doctors because they want to make money, okay, because they really want to help you. And so if that's your real goal, and entrepreneurship allows you to multiply that, there's nothing more beautiful than that. There's that feeling of knowing that you are helping people out there who would be falling for other unproven treatments and ruining their lives in the process, right? So if you're able to give them the actual impact, If you're able to subsidize their treatment, if you're able to reach out to a larger cohort of people than you can physically handle, I don't think there's anything more beautiful than
That is such a beautiful thing to say. And extremely inspiring for those of us who really, really are keen on making an impact, just being able to scale your abilities. There's so many different options out there. And it was so nice to hear how, yes, MBA was a step you took, but it wasn't the answer to what you were looking to get to. And you really had to switch from that employee mindset to an entrepreneur mindset. That's absolutely beautiful. So I know you've always got very interesting questions for me. I'm going to give you a few minutes to just ask me whatever you want, whether it's anything related to your life or anything about me. Let's just do a bit of an informal conversation around that.
Sure. I'm really curious to know what made you, where did you identify the gap? What made you think that this is, I know you're, first of all, for those who don't know, Shubhendu is a very fast learner. When everybody was reading BD Chaurasia, Shubhendu was the one who was studying Hutchinson's and still getting first division. So this guy has a very fast grasping potential. And so I want to know what made you identify that gap as to there is coaching as a scope that doctors really need or physicians need.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's an interesting one. So I think, like you said, the word pivot, I think I've never been afraid to pivot. Like about 9 months before starting MBBS, I didn't know that I was going to do medicine, and I was going to like fit G classes to like prep for an engineering entrance exam and things like that. But then very quickly got clarity on, okay, what is it that I wanted at the end of the tunnel? What's the life that I wanted? And I didn't have 100% clarity, but I knew that I wanted to do something with my hands, and I wanted to put my time the next 4 or 5 years into something that I would use for the rest of my life. And I was like, if I become an engineer, I'll just do an MBA and I'll sit behind a desk, be an employee. I'd never wanted to do that. So I said, okay, let's go into healthcare. We'll be helping the people around and we'll be doing something meaningful, right? And I think that intention to do something meaningful was there right from the beginning, to create something that's, helping the people around me. So then I got into medicine, and the whole time I was kind of looking at like other careers and other things. Eventually got sucked into the whole system, said I want to do emergency medicine, kind of gave up on the bigger impact, meaningful kind of thing, and said, okay, what's the life that I want? And I want some degree of security. I want to work in an environment that, really values patient-doctor relationships and is a bit more idealistic in the way healthcare is delivered, and it's not all about money. And I think NHS definitely does do that. I mean, I don't know the cost of a cannula or a bag of saline or anything like that. I don't know what my patients pay because we don't talk about money. When I say that there's no diagnosis, you're fine, you can go home, they just leave. There's no paperwork, there's no waiting for insurance. They just walk out the door. So I absolutely love that. I got myself into hitting checkpoints, jumping hoops, and getting into the training system here. And sort of a few years into that, I realized that in about another 3 or 4 years, I'm going to be a consultant. And that's kind of the end of the tunnel. And I was looking at consultants and looking at what their life was like. And for the first time, started imagining what my actual life was going to look like. And I had that moment of dissonance where I said, hey, this is taking me somewhere, but maybe that's not where I want to get to. Right? So then began my whole journey of exploring things. And I said, I just want more money. We're not getting paid. We're all unhappy. I'm burnt out and like I'm tired all the time. I'll just go do another job that gives me more money. So I was ready to leave everything that I'd put all my effort in so far for. I was ready to leave my national training post and go into management consulting. And I got myself an interview, did my whole CV, networking, the whole thing. I got myself an interview, and I said, okay, as a stepping stone, because, it's not easy to just quickly jump into an industry role, I did a fellowship. And I did a quality improvement fellowship. So the first reason for me to start the fellowship was like, okay, I keep getting these ideas and I keep looking at the system at a bigger picture and saying that the way we do things right now is not getting us where we want to get to. There's so many inefficiencies in the system. Let me figure out, how do I do that, right? And I'd spent all this time on a couple of other projects where nobody would understand what I was trying to do. Or even if they would understand, they'd say yes, but not actually commit. And they'd like the idea, and they'd be on board for a little while, but not take the final action. And nothing would stick for a long term, right? Like I brought in an app to enable bedside access to hospital guidelines rather than clinicians having to go back to their computer, and it saved like over 1,000 clinician hours every month. Huge value in that. But the moment I left that hospital, it never stuck. And I was like, what was missing? What was wrong? So my idea was, okay, if I do this quality improvement fellowship, I'll get a methodology, I'll get a way of like doing things in a way that it all sticks. And yes, I definitely found that. I found a way to get some problem solving skills. You might have learned some of these in your MBA as well, like root cause analysis skills and driver diagrams and learning Excel pivot tables along the way. So all of those skills I did gain. But what I also was exposed to was the world of coaching, because they would do quality coaching. And what they would do is allow clinicians on the front line, so doctors, nurses, physios, anybody on the front line, to be able to come to this clinic and say, hey, I've got an idea. I think this is the problem we're facing. This is the solution we have. How do we do it in a way that it sticks and it actually really works? And we would coach them through the process. And I really enjoyed that. So I enjoyed that I was able to help give them clarity in a way that they could take action that stuck and made a change and made an impact, right? So by working one-on-one with somebody, I was scaling impact, because that person was then going and helping many others. And I think at this point, I was working with my own coach. I was doing a couple of exercises, assessments, looking at what my strengths are, what's my purpose in life, doing like Simon Sinek Start with Why, and doing all those exercises. And I realized that the one thing that really drives me is being able to give people clarity to an extent that they take action. And I realized that's kind of
Tell me, how does that work? Like, you just said that you had a coach, because I've never had a coach.
Yeah. So in the NHS, you get access to coaching. And I had been having these questions around what my career is going to look like. And it was kind of like the unknown, the end space, where I knew I could do something about it, but I didn't know what to do and how to do it. So I requested a coach. And first time they said, oh, just go speak to your supervisor. They'll help you figure out what subspecialty you want to do. And a year later, I was in the same place, now having decided to leave medicine entirely. And then I went back and I said, can I have another coach maybe, please? So when I worked with them, we really worked hard on setting goals. We worked hard on what is the image of the ideal life that I want at the end of it. Because all this while I said, I don't want this, I don't want that. But what is it that I wanted? How do I get clarity of that? And it wasn't a very complicated process, really. It was a lot of questioning. It was a lot of asking questions that I hadn't asked myself before, but also supporting it with assessments like the Gallup Strength Assessment or personality assessments, and a couple of exercises that help you understand, looking back at your life, what are all of the things that gave you joy? How would you want to build a life that continues to do that for you? So I was doing this, and then I got exposed to coaching, and it all just kind of like really matched up. And the more I read about it, the more I thought about it, the more I spoke to other coaches, I realized that this is exactly what I want, and this is my way of making a difference in the world. So I went down that route, and I think similar to your experience with MBA, doing the coach training gave me the skills, but it didn't teach me how to actually bring it to life. It didn't teach me how to deliver the services, understand what people needed, and then that whole second half of the journey began. So I don't know if that sort of long-windedly answers your question, but
No, it does. It does. And
that.
so my next question to you is do you have a number? Are you goal driven in the sense that do you want to hit X number of students who enroll you as a coach? Would that make you happy?
Yeah, I think.
Have you thought of that?
I think the idea around goals is a very interesting one. And before I started working with my own coach, I was very much against goals. And I said, I don't want to get stuck to things, because I want to be flexible. I want to pivot. I want to be open to opportunities. But something that I think unknowingly, somewhere along the way, what I had been doing, having grown up with both grandparents making me meditate a lot, what I'd unknowingly been doing a lot of the time was having a clear vision of what I wanted to achieve, or like it's something that I do a lot more intentionally now. And the short answer probably is I don't believe in goals, but I believe in having clarity over the person I want to be. And having that clarity then brings to light certain things that might be milestones on that journey. And so I do keep those milestones as something that I'm looking for, but I don't make them something that I'm working towards, if that makes sense. Like, I want to see them happening. The route or the journey maybe often does surprise me, but I have clarity on who I want to be, what I want my life to look like. And the more clarity I have about that, the more likely I'll hit those milestones, and the mind somehow just finds its own way to get there.
Correct. Is there someone you look up to? Do you have a role model?
Oh, that's a good question. I think role model's also something that I kind of never was like, oh, I'm going to follow this one person. I think there's been a lot of people who've influenced me along the way. I think my grandparents, none the least, to get me started on this journey. I think most recently I've been engaging with this book called Into the Magic Shop, and it's written by a neurosurgeon, and it's all about manifesting. It's all about getting clarity on that future vision in a way that you can achieve it. And it's an incredible story. So this man grew up in a relatively poor setting, was introduced to the power of meditation, manifesting, realizing where you are. And then he went on to become like a super rich neurosurgeon, had a Ferrari and all the things that he wanted, and then lost all his money and then refound everything, is with the Dalai Lama and the Center for Compassionate Care or something like that. And it's an amazing story, all in his book. So I've recently been on that path of, recentering myself and realizing that I'm getting a bit caught up in terms of the numbers and the goals I had set for myself, and I need to just go back to thinking about who is it that I want to be. Yeah, and I'm curious, like as I'm saying that, what's coming up for you, and what thoughts are you having around this woo-woo topic?
So, just as we discussed before the podcast, I don't have a number at the moment because I'm so caught up in doing operations. I really need to find time. I think what would make me really happy this year is to have just 1 week where I'm not doing anything. Because in order to have goals and ideas, you really need to empty your mind. But that's just not happening with me. My mind is overflowing with so much work that's always coming up. And I think what would also help is to become good at delegating. I think that's something that I'm working on. I'm sort of a type A personality. A lot of the things I want to make sure that they go by me. So I've created this system of reporting where everything, whether it's through email or WhatsApp, flies by me. But I think there needs to be a system where I'm able to leave temporarily so as to have more ideas. Because at the moment, I don't think I've had a scalable idea in the last 6 or 7 months outside of the venture that I'm doing. I haven't had a scalable idea for KayaKalp Global in the last 5 or 6 months. I'm just repetitively increasing what I'm doing. I'm scaling in the sense that I'm doing what's working and just multiplying it. But I haven't had the chance to sit down and put my thoughts to paper as to what else. I'm shifting gears. I'm going from 2 to 3. But I would want to flirt with the idea of moving to
A different
new
vehicle
lane.
altogether.
Yeah. So that's my goal, is to be able to. I was just thinking about this yesterday. I don't think in the last 1 year I've lied down on my bed during day. I've only used my bed to sleep at night. I don't think I've done that. And the worst is I feel guilty for doing it. So I think my goal would be to overcome that feeling of guilt inside of me. I don't want to work for a week, but at the same time, I know I'll feel super guilty the moment I stop working.
Yeah.
So
here's
navigating that.
Here's where I'll sort of like bring in what I was trying to say earlier. So if you can set a goal of like, oh, I'm going to lay in my bed 1 hour every day, or you can set a goal of like, I'm going to have 1 week where I don't do anything, and you can make that happen, right? But what you actually want is to be the person that does that. Right. And the moment you get clarity on who that person is and how you are when you embody that person, your mind's automatically going to find ways, and you're going to realize that you've started doing these things. And I think that's probably the way that I would recommend or advocate setting goals, rather than saying, hey, do 1 hour a week of just laying in your bed and then you'll achieve the other thing. It's a bit of like chicken and egg situation, but that's kind of what I was.
But if you were to help me come out of this guilt cycle of feeling guilty every time I was not doing anything productive, for me, it's like I just have to be productive all the time.
Yeah, I'm very curious around what that means and what the word productive means for you as well. I'd really explore that and explore how do you live that word in your real life. And there's currently things that you're doing that make you feel productive, but I'd really question you hard on what is actually productive for you. And I'm very curious what that might uncover and bring out in terms of the change in behavior it'll eventually lead.
Right. I think as I've said that, I just realized I'm also in the trap of
doing more,
thinking that working hard gets the best results.
Something that you're very aware of, right? And I guess that's the beauty of conversations with other people. Yeah. So this is fantastic. We're sort of coming up to the top of the hour. I will invite our live audience at this point to drop in any questions they've got in the comments so we can take them. And I've been really enjoying the conversation we're having. It's been really insightful, and I think the listeners will have a lot that they can take away from this. We've got a couple of live audience with us here on LinkedIn. So anyone who's listening to this retrospectively, we've got another one of these on the 25th of Feb. So you can join us live and ask your questions with the guests we've got on. We're going to actually have Dr. Hannah Brew as our next guest on the 25th. And yeah, any sort of last thoughts, anything that you want to leave the listeners with?
I'd say just learn to let go of the trap of perfectionism. I think that's been a real game changer. Take it as it's coming and keep pivoting.
Keep pivoting. I think that's such a beautiful lesson, and pivot in a way that you didn't even see it coming.
Exactly. I'm surprised. I've just realized that you and I have a very similar background story. I mean, I had that moment of realization when I walked into the hospital and realized this is not what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. And you also had that same realization that this can't be it.
Yeah.
Me becoming a consultant can't be the end of the road. And so tell me about that time. What companies were you interviewing for? Were they big four, proper management consulting companies?
The MBBs is what I was going for, and I was talking to a couple of people in the Big Four as well. And I think speaking to a lot of people, a lot of our batchmates some of our batchmates are in those companies as well. Some of my school colleagues were in those companies as well. There was a couple of people who told me that it's just not possible to do without an MBA, and I think
Oh, really?
yeah. So getting into management consulting as a doctor is next to impossible without an MBA, unless you're in the UK. And the UK is quite unique in that sense, where they value the doctor and will say that, okay, you've probably got some skills and experience that will translate across.
And so you were looking at jobs outside in the States?
No, I was looking at the UK because, as you know, my wife's also a doctor and she's in training. So we're geographically sort of here. And I was looking at, and we used to live close to London at that time. So all of these companies based in London.
But Shubhendu, you would make a fantastic management consultant. I can guarantee you that.
That's what I thought.
Anything health tech, I think you can crack.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought, and that's what a lot of people told me. But at the same time, they also gave me the harsh reality that you may not be working in healthcare. You may not. They work on such big issues in big companies and big problems that you may not actually be at the point of making the impact come to reality. So you might just be the person gathering data and giving advice and then having to step away. Whereas now what I do is with my work and coaching, I get to be really connected with making that impact happen. And I think I didn't realize it at the time, but that drive is big for me, and that gives me a lot of fulfillment in my day-to-day. Yeah. And I think you're right. We do have similar stories, and unfortunately, in my role, I speak to a lot of people who are ready to say that this journey is not taking me to the destination that I want to get to. But there's so many people who are just stuck in the fear of failure, not having the mindset shift, not being ready, and saying, I just really need a roadmap to sort of get there. So I'm hoping that with my coaching work, I can get them there. Amazing. So thank you very much for everybody who's been listening today. Thank you very much for tuning into Medic Side Hustles. Our next live podcast is on the 25th of Feb with the fantastic Hannah Brew. Join my newsletter to stay updated and make sure you don't miss out, or follow this podcast, Medic Side Hustles, on Spotify and YouTube. If you're wondering whether you're ready to make medicine your side hustle, try my 3-minute quiz, which is in the comments or the description of this video. And I'm going to ask you, Samyak, do you have any final actions for our listeners to take today?
I would encourage them to keep tuning in, making sure that they're on this path of learning, that you've got them on, and for them to keep expanding their horizon and not be afraid to fail faster.
Fail faster. Lovely. So I hope this conversation sparked some ideas and inspired you to think bigger about your career and your impact. Until next time, stay curious, keep solving big problems, and remember, you have the power to create something extraordinary. See you later.
Bye.